Hello, friends, and welcome back to another week of Unsolved Ramblings with me, your host, Danielle. Here, I will ramble and speculate about unsolved cases in hopes of shedding light so that these families can stop waiting for answers and finally have some closure. Every family deserves to know what happened to their loved ones, so join me each week for new cases, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Before we dive right in, I would like to state that I am not an expert and that this is for entertainment purposes. All of my information comes from research of what has been published online. All online sources are linked in the description of this video. Today, I will ramble about Caleb Diehl, who went missing from Nocona, Texas on April 2nd, 2015. Caleb was 18 years old, standing at 5'11", weighing 145 pounds. Caleb is a Caucasian male with blonde hair and blue eyes. He would be 26 years old today. He was last seen by his sister leaving his mother's home in Nocona, Texas, to meet up with friends. Caleb stated he would return home later to make it to school in the morning, but Caleb vanished. Okay, guys, this case has a lot of twists and turns, and when I first heard of it, it intrigued me, and it also made me very sad for this young man's family. Caleb was born to Chad and Tammy Diehl on March 15th of 1997. Caleb was the youngest of four. He has two sisters and one brother, the baby of the family. Caleb is described as free-spirited, fun-loving, unique, fearless, adventurous, and compassionate by those who knew him best. Growing up, the Diehls were very close to another family in the small town of Nocona, the Howard family. Both families' kids went to Prairie Valley School District and were the same age. They would spend weekends together, have backyard cookouts, go on family vacations. The Diehls rode dirt bikes, the Howards rode four-wheelers. They were just close. The Howard brothers were the Diehl brothers' best friends. And you could say that Chad and Ricky, both the men of the family, were best friends as well. Chad considers Ricky's kids to be his nieces and nephews, and considered Ricky as a brother, the uncle to his own kids. Ricky Howard, a well-known member in the community of Nocona. He's a businessman. He owns a lot of property, owns oil leases, runs cattle, even farms some of his land. He even was at one point the president of the bank in Nocona. A longtime resident of the area, known to everyone around as Mr. Nocona, loved and adored by the people in the community. He would often offer young boys odd jobs on his properties. Caleb worked for Ricky doing all kinds of jobs all over. Caleb would run errands for Ricky, go check his oil leases, and several other jobs around the farm. Caleb's sister Courtney was the last to see Caleb on Monday, March 29, 2015. She states that she asked Caleb if he would be returning that evening to their apartment that they shared in Bedford, and Caleb stated that he would be coming home. He told his sister Courtney he was going to end up hanging out with his friend Christian, and then Caleb left to go run errands for Ricky. Caleb left in a truck that was loaned to him by Ricky Howard. Caleb's truck was broke down at the time and in the shop getting fixed, and it was not an uncommon occurrence for the boys that worked for Ricky Howard to drive the extra vehicles while working on Mr. Howard's properties or running his errands. And on Tuesday, Caleb does not show up to his apartment, does not have contact with anyone in his family, and his phone is going straight to voicemail. The school is calling, asking where is he, because he's missed too many days and he needs to be at school in order to graduate. When Wednesday morning rolls around, Tammy is panicking. And at first, she starts calling all of Caleb's friends to find out if they've seen him. All of them stated that they had not seen Caleb at all. Even Christian, who Caleb had told his sister Courtney he was going to go see. Christian even said that he wasn't in town on Monday evening. That's when Tammy, Caleb's mother, goes to the police station and files a missing persons report on April 2nd of 2015. Caleb's mother, Tammy, stated in an interview with Unraveling the Mysteries that the police really didn't do much the first week after Caleb vanished. She went on to state that since he was 18 and the family had called around looking for Caleb, the investigators thought, well, he'll turn up. After he didn't show up for a family gathering for Easter weekend, the following weekend, and some family birthdays, that's when the family feels the police really started to investigate. It's not long after Caleb goes missing before his employer, Ricky Howard, shows up to Tammy's house with basically an alibi for where Caleb is. Ricky says Caleb left to go to Oklahoma to go work on his girlfriend's uncle's farm for a few weeks to make money for rent. And Ricky tells Tammy not to worry, that Caleb will show back up. Tammy knew something was off with that story because she had already spoken with Caleb's friends, and they stated the previous weekend they had all just hung out and they didn't meet any girls. She certainly hasn't heard Caleb talking about any girlfriends recently, and he wouldn't leave without telling anyone where he was going. Plus, Caleb knew he could not miss any more school, and he really wanted to graduate, states his sister Courtney. A few hours later, Ricky phones Tammy to say that the same truck that Caleb was driving turned back up on Ricky's farm with the keys hanging in the spot that they normally are. But Caleb is nowhere to be seen, and authorities find that very suspicious. So they take a ride out to Ricky's farm to have a look at the truck. When they get there, what they find only makes them ask more questions. Because what they found when they opened the driver's side door and looked in was attached to the steering wheel $300 bills. What's really weird is they are attached with zip ties. Zip ties that are a match to the very same zip ties that are sitting in Ricky's shop at that very moment. When authorities question Ricky about the zip ties, he simply states, well, yeah, they do look exactly like mine. Ricky did offer up a theory about the cash, though, stating that he knew Caleb owed his sister, so maybe Caleb left it for Ricky to give to his sister. When authorities followed up on that lead, they learned that was more than what Caleb owed, and Caleb would never pay more than what he owed. Authorities suspected Ricky had something to do with Caleb's disappearance, just based by his behavior the days and weeks after his disappearance. Authorities wanted to locate Caleb's phone, so they pinged its last location. That led them back to Ricky's property. So they pinged Ricky's phone, and it pinged in the same location as Caleb's. Ricky later admitted to officials that he found a busted up cell phone on the floor of his shop, but threw it away because it was broken. Not long after Caleb vanished, Ricky destroyed the SIM card in his phone that he was using at the time and purchased a new one. All things that raised red flags for authorities, even more so. As authorities are serving search warrants and searching Ricky's property, Ricky has a camper trailer sitting on his property that had the interest of investigators, so they searched it. While doing so, Ricky tells the story about an old clock radio he had that he turned into an incognito camera. It used to face the camper to catch thieves and transients on the property. Ricky stated that Caleb must have stolen it because it was missing. And at the time, the police detectives were like, what the heck? What does that have to do with anything? During these searches, they also found several burn pits on Ricky's various properties. And in one pit, there was a cell phone and 3 computers that had been burnt. When questioned about the burnt items by officials, Ricky states it all belonged to his deceased parents, and he had decided to do some spring cleaning and thought he would just burn them. Ricky was very helpful, participated in many searches looking for Caleb. He wanted to be very involved in the investigation. Now, we all know that is not a good sign. They always say that the person responsible will sometimes get involved with the investigation to slip through the cracks and not be looked at as a suspect, or to be close to the investigation so they know when the cops are closing in on them. I strongly feel Ricky did something to unalive Caleb. Authorities, they just didn't have much to go on. And at this point, Caleb's family had so many worries. Did he party too hard and was hungover somewhere? They just had no idea where he could be. Tammy did state in several interviews that Caleb had some sketchy friends, but noted Caleb himself didn't do drugs of any kind. Tammy thought maybe Caleb got mixed up in something bad while attempting to make money to pay his rent, but nothing ever came of that lead. As investigators are looking into Ricky Howard, they learned that he is a convicted felon, and during those searches conducted on his properties, they found multiple weapons. So officials ultimately end up arresting and prosecuting Ricky for being a felon in possession of a weapon in May of 2015, but he was quickly released on bond. They began looking into his past criminal charges and learned that Ricky was convicted of fraud during the time he was employed at the bank. David Burns of the FBI revealed that in 2001, during this fraud case, they were investigating Ricky on sexual abuse allegations as well. They had learned that Ricky would get these young boys to come work on his farm, sexually abuse them, and when they became of age to drive and needed vehicles, he would talk them into coming down to the bank. Ricky told several boys that he controlled a scholarship fund and that they could get these loans and never have to pay them back, ultimately getting these boys to participate in fraud. Several bank clients complained of sexual abuse towards their children. But when these kids would come out and speak about the abuse, Ricky always had an excuse. Something along the lines of, oh, they're just saying that because I foreclosed on their truck or I foreclosed on their parents' home or vehicle. Ultimately, the feds don't have jurisdiction in sexual abuse cases, so they ended up only focusing on the fraud charges. FBI agent David Burns, the investigator in the fraud case, did leave all his findings of the sexual abuse allegations in his notes when he presented the case to the judge. The federal judge presiding over Ricky Howard's case ordered Ricky to sex offender treatment as part of his sentence for the fraud. So Ricky was court mandated to undergo psychiatric treatment and monthly polygraph testing. This is often a part of sex offender treatment when someone is convicted of a sexually based crime. Even though he was not convicted of the sexual abuse, the judge felt that there was strong enough evidence in that part of the case, and even though he did not have jurisdiction to make a conviction on the sexual abuse, he still ordered Ricky to sex offender treatment. I do not disagree with that judgment at all. But again, how did no one in this small town not know that this man was a pedophile? Investigators start looking further into these visits with the psychiatrist for Ricky's treatment, and authorities found out that Ricky had admitted to his sexual fantasies and desires, that he often attempted to manipulate his court-mandated polygraphs, and even confessed his love of pornography. Officials also learned that Ricky's now ex-wife had absolutely no idea of Ricky's affliction to underage boys. There were 5 boys who came forward with allegations against this man, and no one believed them. One boy, Cody Goolsby, he worked for Ricky in 1997, and when Cody was 25 years old, he finally told his parents what Ricky had done to him all those years before. Cody stated that he would go to work on one of Ricky's properties and they would work till noon, have some lunch, and then go to the lake on Ricky's farm. And that is where the sexual abuse would take place. My question is that if several people in town knew this man had done these things, why did they turn the cheek, so to speak? Why did they allow this to go on? Why were there so many victims? Could this all have been prevented if someone had just spoken up? In December of 2015, 8 months after Caleb has disappeared, Ricky Howard was arrested on 4 counts of aggravated assault of a child because 2 males had come forward to state that Ricky had sexually abused them from 1996 to 2000. One boy claimed there were over 500 times he was sexually abused by Ricky, and both men were underage at the time of the abuse, one being 13 and one being 12. By January of 2016, 2 more men came forward with allegations against Ricky. And in June of 2016, Ricky pleads guilty to 11 counts of unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon and is then charged to 5 years in prison, still denying any sexual abuse allegation. In spring of 2017, Tammy, Caleb's mother, was doing some spring cleaning in her home, and up high in a cabinet that is rarely used, Tammy finds a plastic trash bag hidden in the back of the cabinet. Inside the bag, she finds very curious items. She finds the missing clock radio Ricky told investigators about. She finds several handwritten documents titled how to beat a polygraph with several handwritten questions regarding sexual abuse. She finds a tape recorder that had Ricky recorded on it asking himself the questions he had wrote down. Tammy immediately turned this stuff over to authorities. When asked about the stuff she found and what she thought Caleb had been up to before his disappearance, she states Caleb was gathering stuff, maybe evidence to use against Ricky. At this time, law enforcement goes to Ricky's wife and obtain the home desktop computer. They are going through the computer, and in the computer's hard drive, they find hundreds of photos of young boys. Now, in these photos, there was nothing that was depicting sexual abuse, just pictures of underage boys. So they did some more searching, and they found that there was another relative that lived in Tennessee, and they confiscated a laptop from them. This laptop would be the evidence the authorities would need to convict Ricky of sexual abuse, because they found several images depicting the abuse on the boys on this laptop. There were countless pictures of Caleb on that home computer that was confiscated. There were images and videos on the laptop of the abuse that took place towards Caleb. So Ricky Howard was arrested, and he is now currently serving a 30-year prison sentence for one count of sexual abuse of a minor. There were 40 counts that were dropped against Ricky as a part of a plea bargain. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I sure do wish they would stop giving out plea deals for convictions. They had enough evidence to convict him, so I do not understand why he was even offered a plea deal. Could it be because the count he was convicted of was the one against Caleb, and Caleb couldn't be found to testify against Ricky? Many people, including Caleb's family, theorize that Ricky did do something to Caleb. They believe that Caleb was gathering information against Ricky to blackmail him into stopping the abuse. They believe Ricky did something to Caleb to keep from Caleb going to the authorities. And in 2023, Texas State Senator Drew Springer filed SB 129, also known as Caleb's Law. It is to be part of the 88th Texas legislature. Senator Springer presented the bill during a hearing on the Texas Senate Committee of Criminal Justice. If it is signed into law, the bill would update the criminal code regarding child pornography and allow for first-time offenders to be prosecuted based on the number of images they're discovered to be in possession of. No remains have ever been found, and Caleb is still considered missing. This is an ongoing open missing persons investigation, and Caleb is listed on several missing persons websites. If you have any information on Caleb's disappearance, call the Nocona Police Department at 940-825-3281 or the Montague County District Attorney's Office at 940-894-6211. What do you think happened to Caleb? Did Ricky do something to Caleb in an attempt to cover up his crimes? Was Caleb worried that no one would believe him, that he just simply ran away? Even though Ricky is now behind bars and can no longer hurt any more children, is this justice for Caleb? The man is already behind bars for 30 years. Why not just tell the authorities what you did to Caleb? I hope the family can receive some closure soon and finally have some answers. This is going to wrap up this week's podcast on Caleb Diehl. It has been 8 years, and we are still left with the main question: where is Caleb? Remember, friends, it is up to you to like, share, and subscribe. Help me bring more attention to these cases so these families can be that much closer to getting some answers. Thank you for listening, and as always, ramble on.